The Reverend Dr. Michael Tino, part of the lead ministry team at the Church of the Larger Fellowship, said recently, one of the defining characteristics of our Unitarian Universalist faith is that ours is a living tradition. We do not etch our faith in stone, precisely because we hold sacred that it must change. It must adapt to new challenges, it must meet new understandings, and it must evolve based on new experiences and connections. Our Unitarian Universalist faith is able to adapt and grow and change precisely because it is a living tradition. And it has since before we were a merged denomination known as the Unitarian Universalists. Prior to 1961, our ancestors were part of two denominations or faith traditions, the Universalists and the Unitarians. These two traditions were bound together by covenants and common things that they held, including some theology at the time. For example, and now we can put the slide up, we have this one from our Unitarian ancestors in 1887 titled Things Commonly Believed Among Us. And it reads, "We believe that to love the good and to live the good is the supreme thing in religion. We hold reason and conscience to be final authorities in matters of religious belief. We honor the Bible and all inspiring scripture, old and new. We revere Jesus and all holy souls that have taught men truth and righteousness and love as prophets of religion. We believe in the growing nobility of man. We trust the unfolding universe as beautiful, beneficent, unchanging order. To know this order is truth. To obey it is right and liberty and stronger life. We believe that good and evil invariably carry their own recompense, no good thing being failure and no evil thing success. That heaven and hell are states of being. That no evil can befall the good man in either life or death. That all things work together for the victory of the good. We believe that we ought to join hands and work to make the good things better and the worst good, counting nothing good for self that is not good for all. We believe that this self-forgetting, loyal life awakes in man the sense of union here and now with things eternal, the sense of deathlessness, and this sense is to us an earnest of the life to come. We worship the one in all, that life whence suns and stars derive their orbits, and the soul of man its ought, that light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world, giving us power to become the sons of God, that love with which our souls commune." That's a lot. And in 1936, there was a new statement. This one was called the Statement of Doctrinal Agreement and Tensions. And we'll get that slide up too. It says, Unitarians agree in affirming the primacy of the free exercise of intelligence in religion, believing that in the long run, the safest guide to truth is human intelligence, in affirming the paramount importance for the individual of his own moral convictions and purpose, in affirming that the social implications of religion are indispensable to its vitality and validity as expressed in terms of concern for social conditions and the struggle to create a just social order, in affirming the importance of the church as the organized expression of religion, in affirming the necessity for worship as a deliberate effort to strengthen the individual's grasp of the highest spiritual values of which he is aware, in affirming the rational nature of the universe. Now that was a definite change in language, right? And in 1960, in preparation for the merger that officially took place in 1961, the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America got together and came up with this. And we'll have a slide for that as well. In accordance with these corporate purposes, the members of the Unitarian Universalist Association, dedicated to the principles of a free faith, unite in seeking, 1, to strengthen one another in a free and disciplined search for truth as the foundation of our religious fellowship. 2, to cherish and spread the universal truths taught by the great prophets and teachers of humanity in every age and tradition, immemorially summarized in the Judeo-Christian heritage as love to God and love to man. 3, to affirm, defend, and promote the supreme worth of every human personality, the dignity of man, and the use of democratic method in human relationships. 4, to implement our vision of one world by striving for a world community founded on ideals of brotherhood, justice, and peace. 5, to serve the needs of member churches and fellowships, to organize new churches and fellowships, and to extend and strengthen liberal religion. 6, to encourage cooperation with men of goodwill in every land. Now, here we start to see the beginning of our own current 7 principles. This statement and these principles resided in our bylaws as an association of covenanted congregations. And now, before you think this was an easy thing, it wasn't. It took 57 amendments to get it to that point that everyone could agree on. And these stood as our principles until the mid-80s. And in 1985, there was a need to revisit our principles. The reason was to remove the male-centered language to be more inclusive and to add the 7th principle. Now, that's the principles that we all know by heart, right? So let's look at them. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience, and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Now, other than a tweak here and there, these are the principles that Unitarian Universalism has held since then. And a couple of years ago, there was a proposal for the addition of the 8th principle, which reads, and we have a slide for that, we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. Now, we've talked about that one before, how it was brought to us by our siblings of color who said they needed us to make a statement, much like our siblings in 1963 did after our merger. But other than that addition, which had a lot of conversation, we have not made any other changes. And if you've only been a UU since '85, these are the only principles you know. James Luther Adams, UU theologian, said, "A living tradition is not bequeathed through some law of inheritance. It must be earned, not without dust and heat, and not without humbling grace." Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that ours is not a tradition written in stone. It means that we can and should adapt to the changing times to draw the circle wider. And we have. We have done real work and continue to do real work around anti-racism, anti-oppression, and multiculturalism. We work to continue to work on drawing the circle wide when it comes to our LGBTQIA+ siblings. And a few years ago, we removed gendered language from the UUA bylaws. Reverend Kristen Grassel-Schmidt said recently about our living tradition, no matter how revolutionary their origins, institutions by nature settle into systems that perpetuate the way things have always been. And this is why the bylaws charge the UUA with revisiting Article 2 every 15 years, so that our principles don't become some unmovable, unchangeable thing. And now here we are. The Articles 2 Study Commission was formed in 2020. I mean, great time to take something like this on, right? And Article 2 simply refers to the location in our bylaws where our purpose, principles, and sources reside. The commission was formed and tasked with reviewing and potentially rewriting this section of the bylaws. And rewriting of bylaws happen with many groups. In fact, I'm sure every congregation has revised their bylaws at some point because there are things that are in there and things that are not in there that need to be addressed. And this is natural. The study commission began doing surveys right away and hosting theological panels in 2021 so they could understand the values and sources of inspiration that Unitarian Universalists shared. not an easy task in a pluralistic faith tradition. Now, since 2020, the Commission has engaged in 45 feedback sessions with 4,611 participants. Videos that they've produced have reached over 7,000 viewers, and their 29 surveys garnered a total of almost 11,000 responses. Last year, they released their report to the UUA board and to the member congregations, and we were invited to read it through 3 times to give an opportunity for the, this is different, to pass, and then a chance to dig in. Last year at General Assembly, after a lot of conversation, delegates voted to move it forward to continue the conversation this year with a final vote at the 2024 General Assembly. And that vote last year to move it forward was like around 80% to move forward, 20% to not move forward. Now, there have been amendments put forth. Some were voted down, some were voted in, and there will be time for a few more at this year's General Assembly. So let's talk about it a bit. And Jan has thankfully put a link to the final proposed revision. And I will let you know some of my data in here, some of my wording is from the original, so some may have changed, but it's still where we're starting at. Here's the beginning part. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant congregation to congregation and through our association to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Inseparable from one another, these shared values are, I'm going to put the slide up with the lovely little flower, interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity. And as you can see in the image, love is held at the center, the flame of our chalice, guiding the work we do. But what do we make of this love? Reverend Susan Frederick Gray has said this about love. It calls us to courage to continually grow and learn and adapt in ways that foster love and justice. It is not a weak or sentimental love. It burns like the fire at the center of our chalice. It's fierce in a way that compels us to demand justice in our world, but also fierce in how it calls us to courageous conversations, to radical practices of welcome, compassion, forgiveness, and belonging. Ruha Benjamin, in her book, Viral Justice, How We Grow the World We Want, has said this about love. Love, I now believe, is the brick, mortar, foundation, and pillar of the world we're trying to build, where we can be vulnerable but not exposed. Now, with love guiding us at our center, let's look deeper into these shared values, and we'll have a slide for each one. Interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish Earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions. Transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. And like I said, these wordings may change and adjust as we finish wordsmithing the various amendments this summer. But a neat thing I see in this proposed language is that not only are all of our 7th and 8th principles embedded in the new proposed language, we also have centered on covenant. Notice how each value has not only what we lift up, but also how we put that value into action in our covenants with one another. Just like you here at Mosaic covenant with one another when you become members, as a congregation, you have also covenanted with other UUA congregations. And it is these covenants that create the UUA. The new language reminds us of that. We are a covenantal faith. It is our promises we make to one another, the promises we sometimes break, and how we go about remaking those covenants that make us Unitarian Universalists. And this is lifted up in the sections after the shared values are listed. Because remember, Article 2 holds a bit more than just the 7 principles and the 6 sources. Here's the rest of the proposed changes to Article 2. Section C-2.3, Inspirations. Direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder are primary sources of Unitarian Universalist inspiration. These experiences open our hearts, renew our spirits, and transform our lives. We draw upon and are inspired by sacred, secular, and scientific understandings that help us to make meaning and live into our values. These sources ground us and sustain us in ordinary, difficult, and joyous times. We respect the histories, contexts, and cultures in which these sources were created and are currently practiced. Grateful for the experiences that move us, aware of the religious ancestries we inherit, and enlivened by the diversity which enriches our faith, we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. Section C-2.4, Inclusion. Systems of power, privilege, and oppression have traditionally created barriers for persons and groups with particular identities, ages, abilities, and histories. We pledge to replace such barriers with the ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect. We strive to be an association of congregations that truly welcome all persons who share our values. We commit to being an association of congregations that empowers and enhances everyone's participation, especially those with historically marginalized identities. Section C-2.5, Freedom of Belief. Congregational freedom and the individual's right of conscience are central to our Unitarian Universalist heritage. Congregations may establish statements of purpose, covenants, and bonds of union, so long as they do not require that members adhere to a particular creed. The Commission concluded their proposal with these words, quote, "We recognize the fact that the proposed version of Article 2 we have presented is indeed a significant departure from our current version, just as past changes to Article 2 were significant changes from their predecessors. The 1985 version, which first introduced the principles, was a radical change from the purposes and objectives of the previous version. We are continuing in the line of proposing changes that fit at the times in which we live. We fully expect that one day another commission will review our words and significantly change it. We are writing this in pencil, not etching it in stone." We are writing this in pencil, not etching it in stone. Reverend Sue Phillips, in a workshop at General Assembly in 2015, well before this current conversation around Article 2 began, said this: "The congregational way can help all of us discover the way forward, even in the wide world beyond congregations. Unitarian Universalist polity is essential to who we are, precisely because our theology is so broad. Without some kind of vital, clear center around which we convene ourselves, we will not hold. The ways we choose to connect with one another is our center. If Unitarian Universalism is going to survive the coming time, much less thrive, our center must hold." 2015 is when Reverend Sue Phillips said that. a much simpler time if we look back. How much more true is this statement now in 2024? I believe our center is love, not just hearts and candy and squishy feelings love, but that love that shows itself in the public square as justice. We are known as the love people. We wear our bright yellow Side with Love shirts and are out there all over the nation fighting the good fight to bring love and justice to this world. I mean, we're kind of superheroes if you think about it. And here's the thing. I know that not everyone likes the new language. I get it. The current Article 2 is the only one I know too. And change is hard. The commission recognized that as well, which is why we've had 2 years to read, discuss, reflect, discuss some more, tweak it, and then this summer, we will come together virtually as an association and vote. And it's also why I started today with reading our previous Article 2s, so that we can recognize we've always been changing. We are a living tradition, and we write in pencil. We don't etch in stone. As I close, I want to share these words from my colleague, Reverend Sarah Lawal. She created this from the words of the proposed Article 2 language. Spirit of life and love, holy mystery, may we hear the voices of the past, mingled with the voices of today, guiding us into the future, into our own becoming, with purpose and principle, toward liberation for all people. With love as our common calling, let us hold love at the center. May we continue to cherish the earth with humility and reverence, honoring our place in the interdependent web. Let us hold love at the center. May we celebrate all sacred beings, diverse in culture and theology, learning from one another and embracing difference in our own search for truth and meaning. Let us hold love at the center. May we keep reaching for belovedness, for diverse multicultural community, for the collective thriving of all people where all voices are heard as we work to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. Let us hold love at the center. May we welcome transformation, seeking spiritual growth, adapting to our changing world, evolving in this living tradition, never complete, never perfect. Let us hold love at the center. May we cultivate a spirit of generosity, of gratitude and hope, freely and compassionately sharing our faith, our presence, our resources, centering connection and relationships of mutuality. Let us hold love at the center. May we always declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent worth and dignity. May we recommit to one another with our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Let us hold love at the center. Let us keep love at the center, now and always. As we navigate this year and this coming General Assembly, may we remember that ours is a living tradition. May we remember who we are, and may love guide us in everything we do. Amen. Blessed be, and may it ever be so.
Thank you, Reverend Tracie. I had not, of course, seen those iterations from earlier, and they frankly all make me proud to be a UU.